raising taxes on businesses and corporations ever a good idea? If it is a good idea, could you give an example of when raising taxes on businesses and corporations has ever stimulated the economy? And we'll just keep switching order. Senator Wirch.
Well, there are taxes going to be raised, unfortunately, on business, and it's not being done by the legislature. You may be aware of the problem we have in the state with our unemployment fund. And why are we in trouble there? Because we had the greatest recession since the Great Depression. And we ran out of our fund and we had to borrow money from the federal government. And the federal government wants their money back. But that decisions, and I think that's appropriate in this state, those decisions are made by an unemployment compensation council that is half labor and half management out there. So in that case, I think that we are raising taxes on business. That has to be done because we went through the worst recession since the Great Depression. And it's something that's not being done by the legislature, but rather by the UC Council. So sad but true, we have to raise taxes on business to pay off that money for unemployment compensation.
Well, I think one of the things I try to do is I want to educate people. And I think, a perspective that I come from is philosophically, I don't think that businesses pay taxes. People pay taxes. When you raise taxes on business, it's coming from one of three places. It's either going to be passed on to the consumer, it's going to be taken out of wages that go to the employer of the business, or it's going to come out of the pockets of the owners of the business. So it's easy to talk about raising taxes on business and to vilify businesses and corporations, but those taxes have real effects on everyday people, and it's going to be in one of those three categories. Now, obviously, I don't think that we should eliminate all taxes. I think that there's certain functions of government that it should rightly perform and that they need to have revenue to do that. But we need to look at what kind of effects are these taxes having on businesses and the job creators. And again, I'm not interested in cutting taxes so that the wealthy get wealthier or so that corporations can have a lot of money that they sit on. I'm interested in cutting taxes because I think that's what we need to do to stimulate the economy, and I think that's what we need to do to create jobs, and I think that's what's going to benefit the entire community, not just certain segments of the community, and that's what people in this community care about, is let's create jobs, and these are the kind of policies that we need to implement in order to create jobs.
Gentlemen, what is state government's role in attracting new business to and retaining and growing existing businesses in our state? What should the state do or not do to improve the business climate? I've lost track. Who's first? Mr. Steitz or Senator Wirch? Bob?
Well, the state should be competitive in drawing businesses, as many as possible, into this area. CABA has done a wonderful job of that. I salute them, and we work together. There is obviously competition out there to get jobs, but I disagree with my opponent. He talks about taxes to bring jobs in. We talked about this last night. Companies are looking for a trained workforce. A trained workforce comes out of a good educational system out there. I've talked to corporations, I won't mention the names, but they've said their biggest concern coming into our area is, can we find trained workers? Well, this budget cuts the tech schools by 30%, and we have a high unemployment rate, people that need to be retrained out there. Our children are in worldwide competition out there, and the worst thing we can do is what this administration did, cutting the education budget out there. I think in the end that hurts us on economic development.
In my opinion, the state's role in creating jobs is to foster an environment that makes it easy for you, the private sector, to do what you do best, and that's create opportunity and create jobs. It's not the public sector that creates opportunity, it's the private sector. And that's a fundamental difference between my opponent and I. Again, in my opinion, 40% of the workforce that lives in Kenosha County now works outside of Kenosha County. The largest private employer is Abbott Laboratories. The problem in this county isn't that we don't have an educated workforce. The problem is we don't have the jobs for the educated workforce that's here. And in my opinion, if we implement the kind of policies that I want to implement statewide, Kenosha County, the Burlington area, is geographically located to benefit from that more than most areas of this state. And that's why I'm stressing so much that these statewide changes are what is necessary for this area. In my opinion, Bob Wirch has a shameful record of creating jobs in this area. He's been able to point to 2 companies that he's helped bring to this area. After 15 years in the Senate, he should have a long list of companies. We need a strong voice in the Senate that is working hard, contacting companies, working with job creators to bring jobs to this area. And with all due respect, I don't think that Bob Wirch has been the strong voice that we need.
A great question to a journalist because it asks for probing specifics. What specific legislation would you repeal or enact to fast-track more businesses to expand here or to move to the state? Senator Wirch and then Jonathan.
Well, once again, I think anything we can do to hurry up the bureaucracy to give business a fast answer on regulations, I think was something that would appeal to me. But we would have to have the balance to protect the resources. So, you know, I'm an investor out there. My opponent likes to stereotype Democrats. My hero is Warren Buffett. I own stock in a number of different companies, you know, and Procter & Gamble, John Deere, General Electric, I could go on and on. So I'm sensitive to the needs of business, but we have to balance that off with our environment, because big business in Wisconsin is also tourism, that people come in, and we cannot jeopardize that area.
Well, again, I've said it over and over again, you know, what I'm passionate about and what I want to get to Madison and work on first is fundamentally reforming our tax code in the state. There's a lot of young legislators that I've already talked to, a lot of young conservative legislators that are interested in doing that, and I think that all options need to be on the board. I know there's a group that are looking at the possibility of completely doing away with the income tax and going to more of a consumption tax like they have in the state of Texas, along those lines. Now, I don't know that that is a political realistic option at this point, but I do think it's realistic, and I think there's a lot of bipartisan support for my ideas of making a flatter tax code, getting rid of a lot of these special interest tax breaks, and bringing tax rates across the board down, and that's what I want to fight for. Bob Wirch already mentioned combined reporting. I think that needs to go away. I think that's an incredible burden on on businesses. I think it's a job killer, and I think that it is a problem that wasn't there because the Department of Revenue already has the ability to make sure that companies aren't entering into fraudulent transactions just to avoid taxes. So it's a increase on businesses and job creators as far as their regulatory burden and as far as the tax burden.
Now for a